already done them in class. Alrighty. And then you should have your media forms for all of these so that you can get course credit. Make sure that you sent that to the grader. I think you already did. And then, are you Sharika Glover and Livingston? Okay, perfect. So I did make a notation of that. I just want to make sure you're the same person. So we do have a lot of your work. If you haven't received something, it could be because they didn't know that you had the same last name. I think someone asked me about that last week, and I told them yes, because you're with are you with Jessica Center or Save the Children? Okay, no problem. And then you should have all your theorists, your media forms for your theorists, your virtual labs should be completed. And I think you and I talked about that last week. So I think you have all of those. And then the media forms for the virtual labs, either 10 or 11, depending on, I think it was a title issue. Make sure all of that is to the grader. The 10 bibliographies, we talked about that last week, and it looks like we talked about it the class before. So do you have those? And that's like your book reports, kind of. Okay, perfect. And then the CDC milestone modules 1 to 4. 1 to 4, you should have the certificate of completion for that. Your SIDS certificate of completion for that online training. Okay, no problem. And then the special education video, you should have the notes and a media form for that. So just make sure you have both of those. Perfect. Okay, so the only thing that we have left to do is RC 4. I just covered RC 5, and then RC 6 in the entire RC 6. Okay, so RC 4 is what's called a family resource guide. And this is directly in your book as well. Did you get your book yet, Sharika, or is it on its way? Okay, so go ahead and try to find RC4. It's probably around like page 14 or 15. And the one that you're looking for is RC4. And it should be on the same page as RC4, 5, and 6. Okay, perfect. Alrighty, so RC4-1 asks for the name and contact information, including phone number, website of local agency that provide family counseling. So you just want to Google that information and locate your name and contact information for family counseling, okay? And you're going to type that on a sheet of paper. And label it RC4-1. Put it on a separate sheet of paper all by itself, okay? Because when we go to organize this, each component for the RC4s are a little bit different. You see it's 4 different ones. So you want to put each one of these on a single sheet. And then you have RC 4.2. This is also going to be listed out. So you're going to type this one on a single sheet. This one asks for name and contact information, phone number, website of a translation service for children, for families whose home language is other than English. Okay? So don't forget you're going to type the name and the contact information. You can list. You can't. You wouldn't list her directly. You'll list the name of your agency. Now, does she also do American Sign Language? Okay, so you want to find the agency that comes in to do the sign language as well. So for you, Sharika, you have two different agencies, okay? Your agency, and you want to Google or ask her or whoever at the center what agency do they use for the American Sign Language, and list that, okay? And that's going to be RC2. So for you, on one single sheet, you'll have both of those listed. The next one is going to be RC 4.3, which is going to be the name, contact information, underline in your book, Sharika, brief description. So this one's a little bit different than the first two. This one requires also a brief description of at least two agencies in the community that provide resources and services for children with disabilities. So it could be your agency, plus you'll need another agency, okay? And remember, this was asking for two agencies. And don't forget your brief description. All right. RC 4-4. Put this one on a single sheet as well. This was a little bit different. This one says a list of 3 or more websites and brief descriptions of each that provide current information to help families understand how young children develop and learn. Now, we used 2 different ones. We used the CDC milestone checklist. You can go back. You should have it on your media form, the URL, right? So you could already put the website and a brief description for the CDC milestone checklist, and you can use that as one of your articles, okay? We also use CEPHL, and you all looked up a child guidance article, remember? So that's going to be one of your other ones, okay? So that's 2. So you really only need one more. Make sure that you print off an article from the page, okay? All right. So you're only looking up one. Pretty self-explanatory. Have any questions about that, Sharika? Excuse me. Correct. And a brief description. And I think you had the description because you had like your, what did you learn from this website? You could actually put that information there. You could take it straight off of your media forum. I'm just going to put use the information from the media form you already have for the following, okay? All right. Any questions about RC4? I'm going to move you over. I'll do another notepad for RC6. RC5 we just went through a second ago, so you're comfortable with RC5, correct? Now RC6 has 3 parts to it, just like RC4 had 4 parts to it, okay? RC, and you're going to do the same thing for this one. You're just going to print out the information. You don't have to do, well, I'll go through it. RC6-1, this one you're just going to print this information out. You don't have to do a typed list of this, but you want to keep it kind of small. Don't print out like, again, don't print out like 21 pages, okay? So this one's asking you the name and contact information of your state agency responsible for the regulation of child care centers in your area. You can go online. Do you know who regulates child care in your area? You live in Alabama, right? Where are you guys? Are you in Alabama? Mississippi. I don't know why I keep wanting to say Alabama. Do you know who regulates child care in Mississippi? Okay, so you want to locate that information. Ask your director or your URSA specialist who comes out, and this will be the people who come out and just kind of do a checklist, maybe observe a classroom. Not the federal audit people, but the other people from the state that come out. No, they'll say the state is coming out here, and they may tell you to just double check some things, or they come in and make sure that your room has everything it needs. That's the individuals who regulate childcare for you guys. Yep, licensure. What is their name or who does it? And it could be the state of Mississippi, or they may have like a name like Child Care Resource and Referral. It may be Department of Human Services. You want to find out what it is, okay? And you can create a list for that. That's fine. I'll make this bigger. I'm sorry. It's so hard on your eyes when it's at 11. All right, that's a little better. So for RC61, create a list for the name and contact information for the department that regulates child care, child care in your state. You also want to, and this is make a copy of the area in your state regulations that describe the qualifications of personnel requirements. So that's going to be for your teacher, your director, and your assistants. So when you locate whatever department that is, you'll go online, or your director may have it already. You can make a copy of that area. So most directors have like a handbook or a book, or they go online for this information. They will probably be the one to be able to better help you to find this information, and you need the personnel requirements for the teacher, assistant, and director. All right? And then you need a copy of group ratio. Some centers have it posted on the wall, but you need a copy of group ratio. Like 1 to 10 kids, 1 to 5 kids, whatever it is. Head Start programs always are 2 to whatever for the state, but whatever, you have as a copy of that, okay? For child care. Any questions about that? Okay. RC6-2. And this one, you're going to print off the information. So you're going to go to the website and locate 2 or 3 early childhood associations. So are you all a Head Start program? Okay, so you may already be a part of National Head Start Association or the State Head Start Association. Okay, so you can go to their website and print out some information, or if you already have just a membership card, you can make a copy of it and put it in there, okay? And that would be acceptable. So you want to locate another one, which may be your local NAEYC chapter, NAEYC, or the national NAEYC. And on that one, you'll just print out a little bit about, you can do the About Us page, cut, and print that out, okay? All right. RC 6-3 was a part of your general resource collection, but it says summary and legal requirements in your state regarding child abuse and neglect and mandate reporting guidelines. So you already have that. You should just make sure that you have it. If you have the one in front of you, is it for the NAEYC that I asked you guys to print out? It should be at least 3 steps there. The first step for mandate reporting is to notify the state or state personnel. Wait 1 second. When you know of child abuse and neglect, it's your responsibility. Okay, thank you. Give me 1 sec. And I have the one for the NAEYC if you want to turn to that one, because that one I think you all were supposed to highlight it in the back. And we'll actually go through this one. I think I just sent you the video for this verbatim, okay? But the one thing that is so important for this mandate reporting process is, and I'm going to it as well. And these steps are actually the exact same for Head Start. And it is at Principle 1.9 if you want to go to the one in NAEYC on page 3. And I'm going to see if I can cut and paste it here for us so we can look at it together. So I just put it on the notes pad so we can look at it together. It's all good. So Principle 1.9, when we have reasonable cause to suspect child abuse and neglect, we should report it to the appropriate community agencies and follow up to ensure that the appropriate action has been taken. The key thing for us as mandate reporters is that second piece that says follow up. What if you report and it stayed on someone's desk, or you left a voicemail, so you're not sure what happened with the situation? Now, when you follow up, they may very well say to you, oh, we went out there, investigated, we weren't able to find anything, but what we did was we did make sure that we notated it. That happens. Hey, I've done it before. I felt the need to report a family I felt like the kids were staying there a little bit too long, and the kids were complaining about certain things like eating. I was younger, but either way, it's fine. And it was within the guidelines of the state, the situation that was going on. So there was no negligence there. However, what if I chose not to report? You see what I'm saying? And so it's just one of those things that you just never know which way this will go. They have their set of guidelines. It's not about getting a parent in trouble. It's more about ensuring that you've done everything with clear conscience and as a mandate reporter, that when you saw the signs of neglect, abuse, whatever, the entire list that we have there, that you took action. When appropriate, parents or guardians will be informed that a referral has been made or will be or has been made. So appropriate situation might be, hey, if that parent walks through the door, the police have left, you're there to have to answer and talk to that parent. Don't you think that that's an appropriate situation where you have to talk and say what has happened? We can't just all turn around and shut the parent out the door. We have to, put our our armor of courage on and be able to discuss the situation with the parent. If the child comes in and there's a huge bruise on their face, you're going to have to say to the parent, we're going to have to report this. Don't worry. You're going to tell the people exactly the same thing that you just told us. However, it's a liability for us not to report it. It's okay if they fell or they slipped or a sibling hit them or they try to even make their own food in the microwave. It happens. Those are real life situations that actually happen. However, it is still our responsibility to ensure that that will be an appropriate time that we will talk to the parent. We wouldn't let the parent leave out the door thinking that everything is okay. We would actually let the parent know that we will be making that report. Does that make sense? Because if you're a parent and you have a fair skinned child or a situation where you are walking out the door and the child just ran into the wall, or something happened when you were getting in the car, you wouldn't want everyone to be whispering about you or through the day making these comments. You would want them to straight up tell you that you're going to have to, that this is the situation. Stick around so that you can talk about it. We just all need to make sure that it's documented properly, right? That's only respect. So there are situations where it's so innocent, but because of what we do have to, make that extra step. P1-10, when another person tells us about his or her suspicion that a child is being abused or neglected, we should assist the person in taking appropriate action in order to protect the child. So this is one of those situations where, hey, we're the we're the employee, our director is available. We, as a professional courtesy, go to the director and let the director know, what's happening. That director has a responsibility to walk us through the process because that is a secondhand situation. Does that make sense? Even if a parent comes in and they're like, hey, you guys have to tell about these things, right? And I saw the situation with a friend or a family member, and, I just really wanted to tell somebody. It will be our responsibility to walk that person through the process. When we become aware of a practice or a situation that endangers the health, safety, or well-being of children, we have an ethical responsibility to protect children or inform parents and others who can. So if there's a babysitter and they're snatching someone's child from the door all the way into the building, you see them pop their child or verbally abuse someone's child, it is our responsibility to let that parent or guardian know of the situation. Or even if it's a foster family and it seems like that's a verbal abuse, or we witness physical abuse, then we would definitely want to reach out to the second agency that does it. Even if you walk through your child's school and a teacher is just bullying a child, or verbally abusing a child, or even physically abusing a child, it will be our responsibility to report that teacher to the principal. Make sense? Perfect. Okay, so that's RC6-3. All right, so these are the things that you're going to be responsible for. Please make sure that these are completed by November the 10th and turned in. Okay, you're almost finished. Woo woo. The last component that we'll talk about today is your competency statements. Competency statements. So we haven't done much writing in this class yet, only in the media forms, but we're going to move that media form writing into meeting the criteria of the CDA components, okay? So if you have your book in front of you, if you go to CS1, and I'm just going to go through one of them to give you a quick example, and I don't want to confuse you too much, but there are two components. I'm going to put new notes here. Let me, before I put notes 12, do you have all the notes you need from 10 and 11? Okay. Give me a second. Let me just put the date here because we're missing so many people in class. So I just want to make sure that they know that we did come and talk about these things. And then when they get the recording, they're able to see these as well. Okay? Alrighty. Okay, so competency statements. So competency statements, if you see it on, I think yours would be on page, you said 17, and you see those reflective statements of competence. All right, so the CDA Council has an interesting thing going on here. Competency statements, it's not really interesting. It's just that it's an interchangeable terminology. Competency statements can be referred to as reflective statements, competency statements, or reflective statements of competency. Okay, those are all the same. Or CS statements, okay? So just so that you know, if you were to reach out for assistance, or if you were telling somebody who previously did a program in another area, or a person who has been assigned to maybe support you through this last process, whatever the case is, we're all talking about the same statements, all right? There are two parts to a competency statement. I'm sorry. Tried to mute the mic and still coughed in your ear, Sharika. I apologize. Give me 1 second. My cat is meowing. It's so real around here sometimes. All right. So your competency statement is going to be located in any of the CS statements. There are two components to a competency statement. Sometimes people miss it. There's what's called an introductory paragraph, and then you're also responsible for answering the questions in the book. So if you look at it, you'll see a top paragraph and then the word then, and then if you look at it just at a glance, you'll see that it's followed by questions A, B, C, and if you go through the next couple of pages, you'll see it's always followed by questions. Does that make sense? So you have part one, what we call part one, and then part two of each competency statement. In our program, in order for you to get course credit, you will have to break your competency statements for part 1 into 3 functional area paragraphs. So we're going to just talk about part 1 today. Okay? I'm sorry. Part 1 for course credit requires the functional area paragraphs. There are actually 13 in total. So let's look at this. I'm going to just read off CS1. Begin your reflective statement about this competency standard with a paragraph describing how your teaching practices meet the standard. If you look at the parentheses, it says, note, alternatively, you may also choose to write one paragraph for each functional area. The book allows you the option if this makes it easier to express your thoughts more clearly. However, for course credit in this class, Sharika, you have to do it as the paragraph for each functional area. Okay? If you seek help, or if you're doing this like on your own through another program, or if you've had a CDA before, that may not have been the requirement for the course credit. However, for TIPS, it is right. It is a paragraph for each functional area. Correct. So the functional areas are actually located on page 40, maybe 41 in your book. Just double check. But look at page 40 and tell me what you see there. And this is the competency standards at a glance. Competency standards at a glance. Perfect. So you see how it's 13 functional areas? So if you're doing one paragraph for each functional area, you'll need to be doing a total of 13. As an instructor, I found it easier when you separate these two components, because you can quickly say, hey, I got all of my 13 paragraphs. Now I can go back and I can answer my questions. Okay? So the only thing that I'm assigning is the 13 paragraphs right now. The 13 paragraphs are going to be there to reflect your teaching practices. So it's not to redefine the definition. The definition should be in your paragraph, but it's not to redefine the definition. So just to say safety is a teaching practice that I use to prevent and reduce injuries. That's not going to be good enough for that paragraph for course credit. Remember, we have almost 20 resources on safety, right? So we want to see some of that added into your statements, okay? Something from your actual resources or from the virtual lab should enrich your paragraph, okay? So what we have actually is what's called a 6-step narrow it down process. And you're going to use the 6 steps to discuss not only your practices, but how you've applied these practices. In addition, how did you learn about these practices? Okay, so these 6 steps create what we consider an enriched paragraph. So it's only about 6 to 9 sentences in each one of the paragraphs if you follow the guide. Okay. So let me show you the guide really quickly. But the guide is also the entire lecture about the guide is located at fasttrackcda.com. Okay. And it's only about the 13 functional paragraphs. It's not about the entire part 1 and part 2 of the competency statements, only about part 1 of the competency statements. You can review it, make sure you listen to it, because it's really going to break down and give different strategies on how you can narrow these statements down. It's only about 30 minutes. And let me show you these strategies real quick. So here are the 6 steps to narrow it down. When you go to that website, you're going to see, which is just our blog, is actually what it is, Sharika. And then you'll see one of the articles is just how to write a competency statement. And it'll give you a few suggestions and things that we're looking for in our program. So I definitely want you to go through it, okay? And then these, if you want to take a picture of this, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to go ahead and fill the screen for you. You want to have this next to you as you're writing your statements. Alrighty. Did you get it, Sharika? Or do you need me to do it again? Okay, perfect. So these particular steps are going to talk about you're going to talk about each one of the competency statements, and you're going to answer each question, basically it's not a question, but discuss each component when you're writing your statement. So if you're talking about safety, and it says experience and expertise, you're going to talk about how long you've been responsible for keeping children safe, meaning how long have you been responsible for preventing and reducing the injuries of the children that you work with. When did you realize that's your responsibility? Okay, so you talk a little bit about that. Then you talk about your passion. Why do you keep children safe? Why is that important to you? Then you'll talk about some of the training that you've had. CPR first aid, the virtual lab, some of the resources that you've collected. You'll just talk about 1 or 2, nothing major, okay? It could be the hand washing. You see what I'm saying? Anything. Then you'll think about your commitment. What does the standards say, or what does the state regulations say about keeping children safe? Then you include 1 strategy. So if you did use hand washing, then what are the 5 steps for hand washing? You could bullet those strategies out, right? So we need an example of 1 strategy that you use. If it's about child guidance and behavior, you may talk about your redirection strategy. If it's about cognitive, you may talk about the strategies that you use to ensure the children aren't frustrated while they're exploring information, or what technique you have in place to ensure that children are able to ask open-ended questions, etc. Does that make sense? And then you guys all research theories. So when appropriate, in whichever component you're talk about the theorist or talk about any of the other practices that you've learned in your virtual lab or in your notes or in your media forums. Okay? So make that true connection to the classroom environment. It's almost, we didn't give like all of these exams or tests or anything of that nature. So this is where we kind of have you guys come in and pull that knowledge base from everything that we've done in class, almost like if you were in a formal academic setting, an end of the semester project or an essay question on an exam, right? So that's going to be pretty much similar to what's being requested here. So although it will meet the criteria for the CDA as far as a competency statement is concerned, it also will meet the criteria of us seeing your demonstration in writing of the information that you've taken away from the class or from any other environment you already have. Make sense? So the functional areas paragraphs are still just brief paragraphs. One, maybe two paragraphs if you have to push it into two paragraphs, but it's not like 3 or 4 pages. Okay, they're still pretty basic paragraphs. Just make sure that you're kind of hitting on all those components. Each of these can be considered maybe a sentence and a follow-up sentence, or a sentence just to make sure with the transition sentence. But you don't want to overwhelm your PD with like a 3 pages about this. So that's why it's called narrowing it down. Alrighty. Any questions for me? Okay, perfect. Well, I'm gonna send an email. I'm gonna send an email out with the recording because for whatever reason we are missing the entire class. So that you can also go through have the opportunity to go through the recording as well. I don't generally send the recording out, but